Now, in the last video, I talked a little bit about the structure of the class and the way that I recommend that you go about studying for the exams. And then we started talking about the definition of politics. And again, the definition I gave was the struggle over the allocation of benefits and privileges. And I explained that in some detail. If you don't remember it, go back and look at Assessing Democracy video 1. This is Assessing Democracy video 2. In this video, I'm going to explain, I've already given the definition, I've already elaborated on it. Now I want to give you some examples, and then we're going to move on depending to other forms of government that I want to talk about. So I gave you the definition. I elaborated on the definition. Let me give you example 1 of politics. And I'm going to talk about, believe it or not, I'm going to be talking about caveman days. Now, I'm not an anthropologist. I don't even know if anthropologists are the ones who study caveman days. So if I got something wrong here, you can send me an email, but it really doesn't matter because I'm trying to make a more general point. In caveman society, there were politics. Using the way I define the term, there were politics. And the clearest example that I can think of, the kind of politics that happened during caveman days, was the struggle over caves. Who was going to get caves? Because there aren't an infinite supply of caves, right? There are a limited number of caves. And so some people are going to get caves, some people aren't going to get caves. I think if you're a caveman who winds up not even having your own cave, you're probably not doing too well. But of the people of the cavemen who did get caves, all caves aren't created equally. So think about this for a second. I'm sure you didn't anticipate thinking about this in a political science class, but what constitutes a good cave, right? Well, what are the qualities of a good cave? Well, one thing might be its location, right? A cave that's close to a water source is going to be better than a cave that's far away from a water source, right? You don't want it too close to a water source. You don't want a cave that when the tide comes up, it fills up with water, or during a rain, water rushes in. But a cave that's close to a reliable water source is a good cave. A cave that's miles away from a good water source is not as good. A cave that is close to food, right? Now, what do I mean by food? A cave that's close to vegetation where berries and things like that can be picked. A cave that's close to where animals live that can be hunted. That's going to be a good cave. A cave that's not near food of any sort isn't going to be as good a cave. A cave that is away from water and food of all sorts, that's a bad cave, right? And there are other things that might make a cave good. Think about it. A cave that has a huge opening, right? It might be nice if you have a scenic view, right? But a cave that's got a huge opening isn't going to be very good because it's going to allow people, predators, anybody to come into the cave whenever they want to. So probably a cave that's got a smaller opening that you can get into, but then it's more cavernous once you get inside, is probably a better cave. And you can also maybe slide a rock or do something to close the cave while you're inside, right? A cave that has there are a variety of things that might make a good cave. And there are a variety of things that might make a bad cave. And because there are an infinite supply of caves in caveman society, some people are going to get the good caves. Some people are going to get the bad caves. Some people aren't going to get caves at all. That's politics. In caveman society, the struggle over the allocation of benefits and privileges was the struggle over who's going to get the good caves and who's going to get the bad caves. Now, you probably never thought about that as politics, but that's the beauty of this particular definition, because it explains that that is in fact the heart of politics, the struggle over the allocation of benefits and privileges. Now, here's one other thing to keep in mind. Again, I'm not an expert on caveman society, so maybe this is wrong. I don't think so. How did that struggle take place? How did the struggle take place to determine who was going to get the good cave and who was going to get the less good cave or the crappy cave or no cave at all? That struggle was a violent struggle. It took place through violence. Either the biggest, baddest, meanest, or most organized cavemen were the ones who got the caves, right? They got the good caves. But that's how the politics was resolved in caveman society. The struggle over the allocation of benefits and privileges was a violent struggle. And not necessarily that the biggest, baddest, meanest person won, because even the biggest, baddest, meanest caveman has to go to sleep eventually. And so if 3 or 4 other people, cavemen, walk in, push the rock out of the way, beat the crap out of them, throw them out of the cave, and then they can fight among themselves over who's going to get the cave. Either way, the struggle took place through violence. So what's my second example of politics? Modern times. We still struggle over the same kinds of things. There's a struggle over housing. Lord knows we've seen, if those of you who live anywhere in California, you've seen the homeless, right? There are people who, in the struggle over the allocation of benefits and privileges, in this case we're talking about housing, some people have definitely lost. Some people are living in mansions, right? Food. There's a struggle over the allocation of food. You see some people lining up at food banks. Some people throw away more food than probably a lot of people eat. There's a struggle over the allocation of food as well. And we also struggle over other things. We struggle over education. Who's going to have access to education? Who isn't going to have access to education? Who's going to get more wealth versus who's going to get less wealth? Right? There's been a big struggle over who's going to have access to healthcare and who isn't going to have access to healthcare. And because all of these things are in finite supply, houses are in finite supply, healthcare is in finite supply, homes are in finite supply, that's where this struggle takes place. The difference is how this struggle takes place. And that's where the definition of government comes in. Government is the institution responsible for resolving the conflicts over the allocation of benefits and privileges. That's where the struggle takes place. So instead of it being a violent struggle, in theory at least, it's supposed to be a struggle that takes place within certain rules and certain norms. But the key to understanding this definition of politics is to understand that politics describes what happened during caveman society in the struggle over the allocation of benefits and privileges. In that case, we're talking about caves. And it also describes what happens in modern society in the struggle over housing and wealth and voting rights and all kinds of things. It's all politics. So all through my class, that's the definition of politics that I'm going to be using. Politics is the struggle over the allocation of benefits and privileges. Now, really quickly, if I were to ask you on an essay question, what is the definition of politics? Elaborate and give an example. If you just were to write out, politics is a struggle over the allocation of benefits and privileges, sentence 2 would be the people who get stuff are the winners, the people who don't are the losers. And then third sentence is, for example, caveman days of modern society. That essay will get a really low score because it doesn't tell me that you truly understand the concept of politics and why I'm using this definition. So make sure that you have a complete understanding of it. And my recommendation would be that when you're done watching the lecture videos for Assessing Democracy, go to the study guide and write out your answer to the definition of politics, or write out your answer in a full, complete form. If you need to, come back and look at Assessing Democracy 1 and Assessing Democracy 2 to refresh your memory, depending on when you write it out. But the key is if you write out a definition and answer the question, what is politics? If you do that tonight or tomorrow, then you don't have to think about it again. And if you're fortunate enough that on the exam, one of the questions that's selected is what is politics, you already have an outline for your answer right here. You're looking at it right on the, well, I guess right over there. And if you filled in all the details, you're going to do great. But they have to be full and complete sentences, and you have to explain it in a way that lets me know, not that you heard what I said, but that you understood what I said. And that's the difference. If that's what you're going to want to do to get a good grade, to let me know that you understood what I said. Now in the next video, which will be Assessing Democracy 3, we'll start talking about different forms of government.